I'm Tim Durand, and I've been coming here since the Physics Center started in, I guess, 1962. I was born in December of 1960, so spent every summer of my life that I can remember right here in Aspen. We used to rent houses during the summer. I remember the Troll House, and they always had names of the houses, and the Farney House, and different places. And we got a different house every year until my dad built the place. Randy and Bernice built the house, and what was it, 1970? 71?
71, summer of 71.
Summer of 71. Then we had a base camp. But you know, it was a little town. It was just a little town. I remember that. I remember playing with my friend. My best friend was Trey Simmons. And I remember coming around here, right down the street here, about a block away, as a music tent parking lot, and there was an abandoned car parked in the bushes there, and there was these retired miners. They had nothing to do because there was no mining, so they sit in this car. They had no doors and no wheels, and they sit in the car and just hang out. And sometimes they must have lived somewhere, because sometimes they would bake us cookies. You know? And I think it was that frozen cookie dough that they came out with in the 60s. And anyway, I remember swimming lessons. The summer was about swimming at the city pool, where it was an out-of-the-ground pool, above-ground pool, where Ruby Park is now, I believe. And then we learned to swim at the Jerome Hotel. It used to have an outdoor pool at the Jerome Hotel with a fence around it, and the Jerome Hotel at that time was not, the prestigious hotel that it is now. It was actually, it's a brick hotel. It was painted white with this baby blue trim around it, and it was just some hotel with an outdoor pool, and I took swimming lessons there. And the physicists, the big physics connection, it was fun because the same kids came here every summer, so we'd hang out and go camping, and we'd go hiking, and we'd do, I guess Saturdays was the kind of the family hike or family walk day. We'd do something easy, walk up to Blue Lake, or walk, something easy. And then on Sundays was the climbing day, or the more serious hike. And I certainly went on a bunch of those, but I didn't like hiking as much. My older brother was the hiker. Travis liked to climb. He'd like to go, he liked to get up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning and go with the big guys and do a real climb. And I would rather just ride my bike and hang around town. I mean, really, that's what I like to do. And but I like to go camping. I like to do things outside. And it was the whole Physics Center connection, the fizzies, we called them, all the fizzies, and we were the fizzy kids. This was a grassy field. This was actually, I think it was part of somebody's, I guess it was somebody's ranch. They had a couple of horses here, not too many, but a few horses. And the field behind us, where there's a big neighborhood now. Actually, my wife, when we drove in today, she said, "Look, there's a whole neighborhood there." It was the old horse track or something. It was a loop, a dirt trail, and sage, and it was just a big empty field, and irrigation ditches. They used to go float boats in the irrigation ditches and stuff like that. And Stranahan Hall was the only building. It's a small building, and as you could see, it's grown a lot. I used to work here sometimes. I was the bicycle mechanic one year. There's a lot of bicycles, and there's just donated bicycles, and some of them were, in pretty poor shape, and I just, make sure they had air in the tires and oil on the chains and tune them up a little bit. I started working in restaurants, I believe I was 14, and I was a dishwasher at a place called the Super. And downtown Aspen, I don't know, there didn't used to be that many things there. I remember going after hiking or camping. We'd come back to town, we'd go on a 2-day camping trip or something, come back to town. It was always, where are we going to go to dinner? Is it going to be the Mother Lode or the Red Onion? And that was about it. And that was about it. And the Mother Lode at the time was a spaghetti house. Even they had spaghetti and meatballs, and that was about it. And the Red Onion had fried chicken. That was pretty much your choices. And that was fun for my brothers and I. When we come up here every summer, we'd ride our bikes around town and find out And when new places open, we find out what places were still there the next summer and what places were gone. It's still kind of like that to an extent. My brothers and I grew up in Los Angeles with my mother in West LA, and we went to school there and spent the school year there and came here during the summers. And then after 71, we would spend a week or two here skiing during the Christmas break. I learned to ski at Buttermilk. Basically I'd taken a few lessons in Salt Lake City at Alta, Utah. But basically I learned to ski here. I was probably about 10 years old. And going back to the restaurant thing, I started working in restaurants when I was a teenager, and I was a dishwasher in a restaurant on the Hyman Street Mall. Now, the Hyman Street Mall today and the Cooper Street Mall, it's all bricked in. It's a beautiful mall and flowers and irrigation ditches. Then it was a road. It was just a road. And to make it into a mall, they put a big planter, a flower box on each end of the street and said, no more parking, no more driving, there's no more cars, it's a mall now. And I went, wow, I wonder if that will ever take off. It seemed like an odd idea at the time. I'm not sure when that was, in the early 70s maybe, and now it's the fashionable walking mall. I got a job washing dishes in a restaurant, and after about 3 days I was a prep cook, because it turns out if you show up 3 days in a row, in a restaurant in Aspen, you're going to get promoted, and that's what happened. And I became a prep cook, and there was a guy named Timmy who was a soup chef there, a place called the Super, and they had soups. Everything was homemade, soups and sandwiches and salads and whatever. And he was a soup chef, and he taught me about. I mean, I was prepping. I spent most of my time cutting onions and stuff like that. And he was making the soups, but I learned how to do that. And I worked with a baker one summer. They had fresh cornbread and that kind of stuff. And I went back there for a few summers in a row, and I went to some other restaurants. And I ended up, after school and some college, I ended up going to cooking school and became a chef. And I moved back here with my wife, 15 years ago. I think it was fall of '91. Seems about right. And came back here as a chef, and I worked back on the Hyman Street Mall at a place called the Grill in the Park, and I was back at the Motherlode, which then was no longer a spaghetti house. It was a much nicer restaurant. I worked at the Little Nell and the Snowmass Club, and anyway, I've been up here doing that for quite a few years, and it all started, washing dishes, on the Hyman Street Mall. I think before that I was probably the bicycle mechanic here at the Physics Center, but I did a lot of babysitting for the physics kids, the young. I mean, I was young, but the little babies and young kids, and the physicists were always going out to concerts and dinners and stuff like that. So it was an easy gig. I always had plenty of work. There was one time when we caught a snake. Is that the one? Is that the time we caught a snake and brought it into the house, with the apartment, the condo, whatever the people were staying in? We had this snake, and we had entertaining the kids. I think I brought Trey that time, and entertaining the kids with the snake, and we lost the snake somewhere. I mean, it was in the apartment. It wasn't really lost, but we couldn't find it, and I don't think that people were very happy with that. Trey and I used to hang around town. We used to go bike riding. We used to go up to the grottos and go swimming in the river. We used to go. Actually, for a couple of summers, we had babysitters ourselves when I was a little younger, and Trey used to come along with that too. We had this one guy. One time, my dad hired a hippie named Bob, and Bob was a babysitter. And Bob and his friend Bill were camping. That's where they lived. And Bill had a van actually, but they just camped out in Castle Creek. And Bob, got us out there. He's like, let's go do something today. What are you going to do today? Let's go do something. He'd take us to the grottos. He'd take us, exploring the caves, and take us swimming, and take us, went camping. Bill decided that he wanted to look at the stars while he was in his van. So he cut a hole in the top of his van so he could look out at the stars. And then he thought, it's not big enough, so he cut the whole roof off this thing. And he didn't have any electricity because he was camping. So he came down to, the house we were renting on 4th and North, I think it was, and it plugged in some power tools and cut the top off, and then built this big wooden stack of a thing with a with a lid on the top because it was raining, and it was getting wet at night, so he had to build a some kind of top that came off. That was fun. What else do you see? The physics picnics. That stands out in my mind. The physics picnics now are here at the Physics Center every week, and they used to be, I think it was, I don't know, it was like Wednesday nights or something. We always went somewhere. It was always an event. We went up to Ashcroft, or we went to up Maroon Creek somewhere, or we went up to difficult campground, or it was always, a destination. And for me as a kid, going anywhere meant I got wet. And so we go camping in my dad's Mustang up to Ashcroft, and I would always want to forge the river. I'd always find a stick, and I'd go out there with Trey, and we'd get across the river and get back, and I don't get back from soaked from head to toe. Inevitably you fall down and whatever. So that's what it was like growing up here in the summers, I think.